Hey guys, Super Retrocade here. So I thought today I would just kind of show you how I clean some of my cartridges. So what I have here is I have a copy of Super Mario Land 2 and the 6 Golden Coins on Game Boy, original Game Boy. Then I have a copy of Return of the Jedi on Super Nintendo. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open these up and clean them and replace any batteries if needed, and just kind of show you what my process is for doing that. So right now when I look at this Return of the Jedi, it looks like there's something kind of going on with the label right here, but since it's on the label, I'm not going to mess with it. But then it also looks like there's a little something right under the label. So what I'm going to do, I have this neat little isopropyl alcohol bottle, which I found when I was watching one of Macho Nacho's videos, and I'm just gonna wipe off that part of the cartridge here. But I don't think I really want to mess with the label because it looks like there might be a little tearing or something going on. I don't want to make it worse. So let me get a dry one real quick and try that. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is take out my game. The back looks perfect. So then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take out my game bit. Oh, that one's too big. So there's two sizes of game bit screwdrivers. This one I think you need for like maybe Genesis, and if you're taking apart like a GameCube, and maybe Super Nintendo, I'm not sure. I think Super Nintendo. And then this smaller one is typically what you need to take like Super Nintendo, regular Nintendo, and Game Boy Advance cartridges apart. So I'm just gonna take out these game bit screws and put them in my little magnetic cup here. And then this just opens up. It looks like the contacts are okay. Not great, but okay. Always check to make sure it's authentic. So like 1990 Nintendo, everything looks authentic. The inside in here looks a little dirty. And let me double check this one. Yeah, so what I'm gonna do, there's a little bit of dirt in here, so I'm just gonna kind of do the edge where the fingers of the board are sticking out. This one's pretty clean, but I just want to get everything. And on this side, there's a little bit of black stuff in here. But this one's pretty clean. Okay, so then I'm just going to set these two sides of it to the side. And then there's no battery in this game, so unless you use like passwords or something if it has a save feature. And then this should be a 6.3 volt 22 microfarad, which is what's commonly in these Super Nintendo games, and it's commonly in regular Nintendo games. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace that capacitor with a brand new one that I bought off of Console 5. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the excess of these two leads off. In order to do that, I'm just going to put it over my garbage here, and bam, they're gone. So then I'm going to take a little, what's this called? This is a little flux. I'm going to add flux to those capacitors' points, and then I'm going to add some fresh solder just to mix with the old solder to make it easier to desolder this capacitor. So I just put a little bit, so now I have a nice little bubble on each one. And then I actually don't have a desoldering gun. I've always just used a pump. I should have probably bought a desoldering gun a long time ago, but now I've done so much stuff that it doesn't make as much sense to buy one anymore. So I'm just going to heat up the solder and do that. So it looks like I got rid of the solder on one side. And here, I'll try to hold that up to the camera so you can kind of see. So this right one is the one I just did. So that one is now pretty much free. So now I'm going to do the left side the same way. Just going to apply my gun, heat up the solder, and push the button. Okay, so that came out cleanly too. But then the capacitor is still connected. Oh, it's actually not on one side. Oh, now it's not at all. So all I did was kind of wiggle the capacitor, and now the capacitor fell out. So I'm just going to throw that in the trash. Then I have a replacement capacitor I bought from console5.org. And this is a 22 microfarad 10 volt. So when you replace capacitors, you can replace a capacitor with like a higher voltage, but you want to keep the same capacitance. So these 22 microfarad 6.3 volts are usually replaced with 10 volt ones, just because they're more common, easier to get. So I'm just gonna thread this guy through, and you want to watch the polarity. So on the board here, you'll see that plus right over here. So that signifies that the left hole is the positive side. So then on the capacitor itself, it has this silver stripe down the side with a negative on it. So it tells you that's the negative side of the capacitor. So this way I know that I have the polarity right. So another way is to just kind of keep track when you're removing the old one. So then I just bent the legs a little bit to kind of hold it in there. And I'm gonna bring out my solder, and I'm just gonna do a nice little blob on each one. And ideally, you want them to kind of look like Hershey Kisses. They've kind of melted and then gone up the board, or gone up the capacitor's leg. So then I'm going to go here and I'm just going to clip them. And then now that I've clipped them, I'm going to just bend this guy over like it was. So now we've got a brand new capacitor on here that's hopefully going to be good for another 40 years or 30 years or whatever it's been. Then I'm going to take some isopropyl, and this flux that I applied to make the solder stick better is called no clean flux, but it's still kind of recommended to just kind of take a Q-tip with some isopropyl and clean it off the board, just because it is a sticky substance. Okay, so that's what I do on all my carts, is replace the capacitor. But then what I also like to do is clean this junk off of the connector, which you can kind of see how there's all those black marks where it actually goes into the console. So what I do for that, some people will just use like an eraser head, or some people will just use isopropyl alcohol. It kind of depends like how bad the cartridge is. So like on this cartridge, I would use this, which is a microfiber, or which is a what's it called? A micro carbon fiber. This is a carbon fiber pen, I believe. Carbon fiber. I think it's carbon fiber. So what you do with this pen is made for like scraping like the lacquer off of boards, like if you wanted to like solder to a trace. But what it's also very good at is scraping off of this hard gold, you know, scraping all that black stuff off. But the thing about this is you can damage it using this. So you typically want to go pretty light. So what I'm gonna, and if I get a game that's really clean already, I will skip this step and just use the isopropyl. But most games that I get, just because of their age and use, I've used this carbon fiber pen. So this I'm actually not really going to have on camera that well, because this part I do over the garbage, because there's all kinds of little shavings that come off. Actually, let's see if I can kind of get it here. Yeah. So what I do is I just kind of take this and go back and forth real lightly. And you just kind of, you don't want to use force. You just kind of want to go back and forth, back and forth. And probably a better way to do it would be to actually go like this way with the legs. But I find that I haven't messed up anything doing it this way, going across the legs. So just kind of do that. And try not to use much force. So you're really just trying to scrape this black gunk off of the end of them. So now if I kind of hold this up, you can kind of see it's a lot more faint where the black parts are. So that's going to make these cartridges read a lot better once you start putting them in actual systems. You know, I know a lot of companies like Hyperkin sell like those smart cards or whatever. I just kind of clean them off. But I find that when you first get the games, the best thing to do is to clean them with like a microfiber pen or a carbon fiber pen. So I did the one side. So now here's the other side that I'm about to do. So like you can see, this side is a lot less, and now this side that I haven't touched is a lot more. So now I'm going to go back and forth on this side, trying to clean a lot of this gunk off. And this gunk is like stuff that the Q-tips and isopropyl probably aren't going to take off by themselves. Some people do report using like an eraser head for like from like a pencil to do this, but I find that using this carbon fiber pen works really well. So I'm just going back and forth, but I'm not using very much pressure, and I'm trying to stay on just those teeth, trying to stay away from the actual circuit board itself, because you don't want to take any of the lacquer off the board and actually expose stuff. Because you could have, you know, oxidation that occurs or whatever over time. So you don't want to destroy your games for the future. I mean, these are games that I hope to keep the rest of my life. So I'm just kind of going back and forth, back and forth. And you're not going to get it 100% gone, but you're just reducing. Okay, so then I'm going to put that back together. So this is what that side looks like now. Okay, so then I'm going to point this back over. I'm going to try to point this back over at the project mat here. So then all I'm going to do is take a Q-tip, take my isopropyl alcohol, and I'm just going to go over with the wet side. And then I'm immediately going to take the other side of my Q-tip and go over with the dry side. And this isopropyl dries pretty instantly. So that is not 100%, but that's a lot better. I mean, this is probably a game that was played a lot by someone. A lot of times when I do this, I can get the like almost 100% gone. Let's see if that focuses in. But this is still there, but a lot lighter. But I'm thinking, since this is a Star Wars game, you know, it probably was played a lot by some kid someplace. That's okay. And it's kind of nice doing this because this is all gunk that you're getting off of it that's not going to end up in the cart slot of your system. So I'm just using the dry side. And that side looks really good. So it's reduced. I'm not, you know, you could take the it's not carbon fiber, fiberglass, the fiberglass pen. You could take the fiberglass pen to it again and try cleaning it again, but I try not to get too crazy with that stuff because you don't want to wear out these contacts. So at this point, I'm going to call it good, and I'm going to take the back side of my shell and I'm going to mount this back in it. Ooh, and I just see a little mess in there that I haven't cleaned up. So let me just kind of clean this gunk out here. Okay. Maybe that's a mistake when they were manufacturing or something. It's just the plastic isn't smooth in there. So I'm going to put that PCB back in, and then I'm going to put my outer shell back on. Then we got one game bit screw. And another. So then what I'm going to do, let me go grab my manual and stuff. So I have a third-party company that I've been buying Super Nintendo cases from. So open this guy up, take my cart, stick it in here, and then take my manual, which I have in a little plastic protector. Put that in here. And bam, we got Return of the Jedi for Super Nintendo, recapped, ready to go. So then the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to do Super Mario Land 2 for the Game Boy. So what I'm going to do with this is first take it apart. The label and everything's perfect on it, so there's no like exterior cleaning that needs to be done. Oh, the only thing is maybe this. You can see, I don't know if you guys can see it, but there's all kinds of scrapes here where it's inserted into different Game Boys. So I'm just going to take a little isopropyl because on the last game I did, I was able to just kind of do this, and I was able to get rid of all those marks. So we'll see. If not, it's not a big deal. Yeah, the marks are still there, but that's not a big deal. You're going to get those just from inserting the game into different Game Boys. So I'm going to take my game bit, and then the way that these open is you just kind of push down and pull it off. And this guy comes out, your PCB here. So in Game Boy games, it's only the second one I've done, but there's not really like a capacitor to do on them. There's really just, you know, the battery and then all the little fingers of the connector here. So for the Game Boy batteries, I actually wasn't able to find them on Console 5. It doesn't look like they carry them. So I actually ended up going on eBay, and on eBay there's two different sizes. There's CR 1616s and CR 2025s. I guess inside of these Game Boy carts, there's like, some will have a smaller battery, some will have a bigger battery. So this actually looks like it's one of the smaller ones, one of these CR 1616s. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out one of those batteries here, which is this guy. And all I'm going to do is replace the battery in this and clean off the connector. Because there's no, I see a few resistors in there, but I don't see any capacitors in these Game Boy games. So the way that I'm going to replace the battery is I'm going to take a little flux, and before I do that, I've got my desoldering pump here. Let me zoom out once. So what I'm going to do is just open this up, and I dump this part out in the garbage, and then I have this Craftsman screwdriver that fits in the nozzle here. So I push that up, and that gets the excess solder out of there, and then I throw that in the trash. So that's how I clean my desoldering pump, because I'm going to desolder this battery off this Game Boy board here. So let's zoom back in. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Can move a little bit up. Okay, so first thing I'm going to look at is the polarity. So the negative side's over here, positive side over there. On these little replacement batteries I have, the positive side is this top side. So this is the way it's going to replace it. So even though these are going in different directions, this is positive, this is negative, this is positive, this is negative. So I'm going to take my flux and I'm going to apply it to each post of that battery. And that's going to make it easier to apply fresh solder to each side of this battery. So I'm going to take some fresh solder. Okay. And I'm going to apply solder to each screw post. I mean, no, not each screw post, but each post. So I'm mixing the old solder with the new to make it easier to desolder. You don't need a ton, but you need a healthy amount. Okay. So then the way that I have found to get it off is to just apply heat, and I'm going to try to make sure I stay on. I might be blocking this. What I'm going to try to do is come up from here and apply heat, And at the same time, I've got my nail underneath this battery, and I'm just trying to lift that end of the battery. Okay, so I just got that end lifted off the board, and hopefully I didn't mess up the pad, which I don't think I did. So then I'm going to desolder the other end of the battery. So in order to do that, I'm going to heat up this one and just lift on the other side. Waiting for, it's a lot of solder over there. Okay, so I got that off. So here's that old battery. So now we've just got those contacts. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of apply my iron to them to just kind of clean them up. Okay, so then what you want to do is you want to take the new battery and apply it across here, about like that. That actually looks perfect. And then I'm just going to put a glob of solder on the tip of my iron. And then I'm going to hold the battery down with one finger and just heat up this side. Hopefully that's, well, it looks like I was doing a pretty good job of covering it up in the shot. Let me try to do that differently. Okay, so I gotta get my PCB, try to get the battery aligned with where I want it, like there. Then I'm going to try to come in from a ways away and just heat this side. And you want to get that heat transfer to the solder below this, below the battery's contact here. Then you pull it off. Yeah, it's not enough. I gotta get some more heat transfer here. Okay, and it's still moving. So that makes me think I'm gonna put more on the underside of it. Okay, so I'm going to line this up again. And I'm actually pushing down fairly hard, trying to heat up that solder underneath. Okay, so that time it's solidified. So if you look at this side, it's not perfect, it's just kind of tacked there. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go and do this other side. So what I'm going to do here, let me zoom in a little more, is I'm going to just apply solder and get this positive side of the battery down. Perfect. So this side actually looks really good. This positive side looks really good. This negative side, I could do better. So what I'm going to do now is this negative side, I'm just going to apply more heat again and see if I can get it any more flush. And I'm going to do that by applying a larger surface area of the iron, trying to transfer more heat. Yep, so that just made it a lot more flush with the board. So now I don't have all that. Instead of having like 2 layers of solder, I just have a big blob on top of it. So that looks perfect. Maybe I have a little too much on this one, but it's on there and it's not moving. So then what you want to do is take your isopropyl again and clean that flux from the surrounding area. Okay. Then take my fiberglass pen and there you go. I'm going to clean these contacts, even though the contacts on this guy, let me try to get it in the camera here. The contacts on this guy are super clean. Yeah, so maybe, actually, you know, this is probably an instance where I wouldn't use the fiberglass pen. So I'm just going to put the fiberglass pen away. And I'm just going to take some isopropyl. Oop. That one got away from me. Just going to take some isopropyl. And I'm just going to go across these. And just get some gunk off that would have ended up inside of my Gameboy's cartridge slot. I'm going to take the dry side and dry it. Perfect. Then I'm going to take my cart, and it's a little wet there, so I'm going to move it over here, and I'm just going to put this guy back in and put this guy back on top. Push it up, flip it over, making sure there's nothing on the other side that's going to mess up my label. Put my game bit back in. Oop, there's something. There's a shaving of something in there. Let me get rid of that. Okay. So now the only thing about this Game Boy game, since I just replaced the clock battery, I did lose any save games that were on here. But now I've got a battery that's potentially going to last however long. Okay. So then I'll take this guy, put him in his little Game Boy protector. And now we've got a brand new save battery in our Game Boy cartridge. And then I'm gonna turn off the soldering iron. And then another thing I'll show you. So at this point I got my project mat, and it's got, you can't really see it in the video, but it's got little shavings and stuff on it from using my desoldering pump. So I'm just gonna grab a little packaging tape. You just take this guy. It's almost like a lint roller. You just put some around your hands, and that'll pick up all the little shavings on this mat. Because the next time, you know, especially if I've got an expensive game, you don't want these little shavings scraping up the label or something. So just clean that off. I already cleaned my pump, my desoldering pump. Put the fiberglass pen away. Close the lid on my isopropyl alcohol, and that's how I clean games. So this is Super Retro Cade. Thanks for watching.